I'm going to choose a room that's about 250 square feet. In the middle of the new room, with the smell of fresh wood in the air, Lucas said with a joyful laugh. I stopped unpacking. Is she going for a room that's about 250 square feet? What in the world is Jessica talking about? I'm taking this corner room, Lucas announced, making me even more unable to grasp the situation. If you defy me, I won't be taking care of you, Lucas declared with a sneer, glaring at me. But inside, my mind was still in chaos. Huh? Whose house are we talking about? Feeling that something wasn't adding up with my eldest son and his wife, I questioned them. Huh? What? They both gave me a vacant look, and finally, I began to understand the situation. Ah, I see. That's what this is about. This could be a good opportunity to set things straight with my eldest son, Lucas, and his wife, Jessica, who have been running me ragged for years. I must not let this chance pass by. Alone, I felt a fiery determination inside me. My name is Catherine Thompson. I'm turning 65 this year. My husband passed away from pancreatic cancer 5 years ago. By the time the cancer was found, it was too late, and he passed away a few months later. The abruptness of it all left me unable to catch up emotionally, and for a while, I lived like a shell of a person, just eating, going to the bathroom, and bathing, simply passing the days. Lately, my legs have been getting worse, making it hard to live on my own. It was my eldest son, Lucas, who brought a ray of hope into my wilted life. That year, Lucas was getting married and he and his fiancée, Jessica, expressed a desire to live with me. I was taken aback when Lucas suddenly brought up cohabitation. Up to that point, he had been living in the company housing provided by the regional bank he worked for. I had simply assumed that they would naturally set up their own place once married. But contrary to my expectations, my son and his wife-to-be wanted to live with me. I hadn't even met Jessica yet, and I didn't know anything about her. But for me, having lost the love of my life and feeling a gaping hole in my heart, Lucas's offer to live together felt like a consolation sent from God. Of course, I'll contribute to the household expenses. Oh, I'm fine with it. I found myself quickly agreeing before I knew it, and Lucas smiled with satisfaction. Got it. Then I'll bring Jessica over next week. Take care, he said, and with those words, Lucas left. Despite his somewhat rough personality, I always thought that was just because he was in front of his parents, maybe showing some rebellion. To me, he was still my dear child. I felt as if my once lonely life had suddenly been illuminated. A week later, as promised, eldest son couple came to our house. Here we are. Despite it being our first meeting, I was surprised by how Jessica confidently strode in, her footsteps echoing loudly. Despite being the same age as Lucas, 30 years old, she wore a skirt shorter than knee length, her hair was dyed pink. And her nails were glittery and flamboyant. Nice to meet you. You're Jessica, right? Yeah, that's me. But, what's with this house? It's kinda run down and small, isn't it? I was taken aback as Jessica entered the house and immediately started criticizing it without even a proper greeting. That's true. But it's better than nothing, so bear with it. Sure. Lucas retorted with a dismissive tone, which confused me even more since just a week ago he had been so keen on moving in. Despite the sudden rudeness, I reminded myself that we were going to be living together from now on, and I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. So, I sat Lucas and Jessica down and served them some tea. Do you work, Jessica? There's no way I'm working, it's just too much hassle. Oh, I see. And what about you, do you work? No, I've been a homemaker. Wow, so you're living off your husband's pension? Must be nice. You can just live it up without working a day. Despite both of us being homemakers, I looked at Jessica in disbelief as she sarcastically laughed and called my situation quite the nice position. I do receive a survivor's pension, but that's my only income. It's nowhere near enough for a luxurious life, I'm just getting by day to day. Living leisurely is nothing but a pipe dream. More importantly, Jessica, how should we divide the household chores? Since we're both homemakers, maybe we can split them equally? Wanting to change the subject, I proposed this to Jessica. Living together means the three of us supporting and helping each other out in our daily lives. I assumed that since Lucas would be working during the day and contributing financially, Jessica would be willing to help with the chores. However, she frowned visibly at my suggestion. Divide the chores? No way, you should handle all that. I don't know anything about this house. Plus, I'm busy hanging out with friends. With that sharp retort, Jessica looked at me with a piercing gaze as if dumping all the responsibilities on me. Well, then, just help out whenever you can, please. I couldn't ask too much of Jessica since we had just met today, so I ended up conceding on the issue of chores. Jessica wore a smirk as if she had one. I felt overwhelmed and dismayed thinking about our future life together. Living with 3 other people was a far cry from the married life I had initially imagined. First off, Lucas would say he's too busy with work and wouldn't come home until late at night. True to her initial declaration, Jessica didn't do any household chores. I thought she might at least be able to take out the trash, but she seemed to have trouble getting up in the morning and couldn't manage to do it on time. Reluctantly, I found myself doing all the housework for 3. Before moving in together, I thought this would fill the void of missing my husband, but now I regretted it, thinking maybe I was better off alone. Jessica wasn't just neglecting the household chores, she was out and about every day. Given her flashy appearance, I had suspected she might be a bit wild, but to be out playing every day really was quite the nice position indeed. Every time Jessica came home, she was always carrying shopping bags from well-known international brands. These were brands that sold luxury items I could never afford on my pension. When I asked, "How did you afford these?" she laughed through her nose and said, "Obviously, I bought them with my allowance." However, I knew Lucas's salary wasn't high enough to afford multiple high-end brand items. If Jessica had been saving up her allowance bit by bit to buy these things, I could understand, but buying brand-name items nearly every day doesn't leave room to save. I wondered where she could possibly be getting so much money. And there was another unexpected issue for me. Lucas wasn't contributing financially to the household. About a month after we started living together, I thought Lucas would have transferred some of his salary into our household account by now, so I checked at the bank. But there was no money from Lucas. Before we started living together, I remembered Lucas saying, "I'll contribute financially to the household." Well, it's only been a month, maybe he's just late or forgot, I thought, and went home without much suspicion that day. However, as 2 months, then 3 months passed, there was still no financial contribution from Lucas. I finally decided to tell him that it was impossible to cover the living expenses for 3 people with just my pension. Could you contribute a little to the household? The budget for groceries is really tight. Ah, sorry, I forgot. I'll make sure to put in some next time. Hearing the words "I forgot," I felt relieved and believed that Lucas would start contributing financially from next month. However, his promise seemed to be just an excuse to placate a child, and he never actually made the transfer. I pleaded with Lucas several times, but he was usually drunk by the time he got home and quickly forgot what I had said. Or perhaps he was pretending to forget. When it became clear that I wouldn't receive any money from Lucas, I had no choice but to find a part-time job. I started working at a local flower shop. Returning to work after so long was exciting, but the long hours were tough on my body, which was already past retirement age. Still, the pressure of earning enough to support 3 people weighed heavily on me. I worked 6 to 8 hours during the day, similar to a full-time job, then came home to prepare dinner for 3. Jessica, as usual, did not start helping with the chores even though I had begun working. On the contrary, she would throw tantrums over the meals I cooked, like a small child. One evening, she flipped her plate over and exclaimed, "What is this? It tastes awful. I wanted curry. Make it again." It wasn't just one day that such incidents occurred. Again and again, Jessica would find fault with the meals I prepared based on her mood for the day. I felt a surge of anger and sadness, but realized that arguing with the unreasonable Jessica was futile, so I silently remade the meal. I wanted to break free from this life that felt like slavery. I can't go on like this. Instinctively, I knew I couldn't go on like this. So, I decided to find a hobby to distract myself and asked the manager of the flower shop, "Can you think of any hobbies I could do at home?" The manager, Mrs. Smith, was a young woman in her 40s who you could tell must have been very beautiful in her 20s, fitting the image of a florist perfectly. "How about something handmade? You're welcome to use the flowers that we're going to discard." Following the manager's advice, I decided to make jewelry using flowers. Making jewelry was a lot of fun. I was naturally skilled with my hands and quickly got the hang of making jewelry that looked just as good as what you'd find in a store. The manager, who was knowledgeable, even showed me a site where I could sell my handmade creations. Just out of curiosity, I put the jewelry I made up for sale on a website. Just out of curiosity, I posted some of my jewelry on the selling site, and within a week, orders started coming in, and I began to earn an income from it. The joy of earning money from a hobby was exhilarating, and I made jewelry in every spare moment I had. Jessica scoffed at my efforts, saying, "What's this? People actually buy these?" But I ignored her. When she realized I wasn't paying attention to her, she tried to annoy me by saying, "You're just like a burden to society, an old person who's useless." But I didn't react to that either. No matter what Jessica said, I wasn't afraid anymore. 5 years had passed since I started making jewelry, and I turned 65. Recently, I bought a house nearby. I loved the house I was living in because of the memories with my husband, but it was getting old, and everything was starting to fall apart. So I was satisfied to be able to buy a new house. And as I was thinking about living there without my eldest son couple, Jessica peeked over my shoulder at the floor plan of my new home. "Wow, is this a new house? What's this, are you moving?" Jessica exclaimed with a cheerfulness I had never heard from her before. Looking at floor plans is indeed fun, and I like it too, but I never imagined that Jessica, who always seemed so angry, would get this excited. "Yes, that's right. Wow, it's really big." Jessica was absorbed in the floor plan, forgetting herself. For the first time in 5 years of living together, I saw a childlike side to Jessica. After that, I was busy buying furniture for the new house and packing up for the move. Lucas and Jessica, as usual, did whatever they pleased, paying no mind to my busyness. On the day of the move, I had asked some acquaintances to help with the big items, so I left the house with just one suitcase. "The new house is big, isn't it?" "It's spacious, I've seen the layout." The eldest son couple seemed eager to see the new house, and they were more excited than usual. I took Lucas and Jessica to the new home. Upon seeing the stylish black exterior, wooden door, and the large garden, both of them exclaimed, "Wow!" The garden was my own personal touch, something I insisted on for my hobby of growing flowers. When we entered, the expansive room spread out before us, and I felt very satisfied. Having bad knees, I made sure the house was single-story and had handrails installed, which turned out to be the right decision. "Whoa! It's super spacious and super clean." "It's more than I expected." The two of them, eyes sparkling as if they owned the place, walked around the house while I was unpacking, cheering every now and then. That's when I began to feel a sense of unease, thinking, After they had looked through all the rooms, they came back to where I was. "I'm going to choose a room that's about 250 square feet. In the middle of the new room, with the smell of fresh wood in the air, Jessica said with a joyful laugh. I stopped unpacking. Is she going for a room that's about 250 square feet? What in the world is Jessica talking about? "I'm taking this corner room," Lucas announced, making me even more unable to grasp the situation. "If you defy me, I won't be taking care of you," Lucas declared with a sneer, glaring at me. But inside, my mind was still in chaos. "Whose house are we talking about?" Feeling that something wasn't adding up with my eldest son and his wife, I questioned them. Huh? What? They both gave me a vacant look, and finally, I began to understand the situation. Ah, I see. That's what this is about. This could be a good opportunity to set things straight with my eldest son, Lucas, and his wife, Jessica, who have been running me ragged for years. I must not let this chance pass by. Alone, I felt a fiery determination inside me. I bought this house for myself. I explained the reasons for buying the house to my eldest son and his wife, who were standing there in front of me. I told them about the original house deteriorating with age, my thoughts on wanting to end our cohabitation, and how I considered that it might be more comfortable for Lucas and Jessica to live on their own without me.
Ending the cohabitation? What are you talking about? Yes. I haven't heard anything about this. I thought we were going to live in this house.
The two were bewildered by my confession. From my perspective, I couldn't comprehend the nerve of eldest son couple, who seemed intent on living with me indefinitely. Moreover, I never said a single word about us living together in this new house. If we were going to live together, I surely would have consulted them about the floor plan to some extent. I hadn't discussed anything about the house with my eldest son couple, so the fact that they assumed they would be living here too was a real surprise.
I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, but I thought if I explained it in detail, you might insist on coming along. And since I was only packing my things, I thought you would have realized. Even today, I assumed you were just coming to see my new place. After all, Jessica, you dislike everything about my cooking and cleaning, don't you? I never thought that you would actually want to continue living with me.
When I said that, heavy with irony, Jessica was at a loss for words, uttering only a stifled
But that's weird. How come you have the money to buy such a house? I've looked through the household account as much as I could and never saw that kind of money. Never mind.
Lucas's face turned pale as if he had let something slip by accident. I was aware that Lucas had been taking money from the household funds. I had stayed silent because I was waiting to see when Lucas would reflect on his actions. If he had shown even the slightest hint of remorse, I might have consulted him about the new house. But Lucas hadn't just failed to contribute financially to the house, he had been using the household money for himself, so I had resolved not to hold back anymore. I earned the money myself. It was about 5 years ago, I think. I started making jewelry as a hobby, remember? The florist manager suggested it to me. Initially, I was just selling a little bit on a sales website, but then a famous influencer featured my jewelry on their social media. After that, my creations started selling like crazy, and my income increased significantly. Yes. The reason I, who was living on a pension, could afford a house was because of my success in selling jewelry. Of course, even with the buzz, jewelry sales alone wouldn't have made enough money to buy a house. I received invitations from various apparel and jewelry companies, participated in tie-up projects, and got advertisements. I wanted to use the substantial amount of money I earned, which I couldn't have achieved with just my part-time job, to buy a new house because of the strained living situation with my eldest son couple.
It's a lie! There's no way you can earn money like that!
Jessica screamed in denial of the reality. Up to this year, when she turned 35, Jessica had hardly ever worked. Yet she was always splurging on luxury brands, indulging in extravagance. It was no surprise that someone like her couldn't understand how to earn money. I know about you, Jessica. I heard you dropped out of high school, had a fight with your parents, and ran away from home. You were homeless, lied about your age to work nights, right? I can sympathize with that, even if it wasn't the right thing to do. But after quitting that job, just wandering around aimlessly, hanging out with bad influences, splurging on luxury items, and then it even led to shoplifting, didn't it?
No!
Jessica's face showed shock, clearly not expecting me to confront her about shoplifting. I had suspected Jessica of shoplifting about a year after we started living together. I always thought it was strange that she was wearing only luxury items right from the start. There's no way Lucas's salary could cover the cost of such high-end brands. I immediately suspected shoplifting. One afternoon, when Jessica went out, I discreetly followed her and, sure enough, she was guilty. I could have confronted her right there and then, but knowing Jessica, she would have likely talked her way out of it. So, I decided to record evidence of her shoplifting on my phone, thinking that if she didn't change her ways, I would turn it over to the police someday. I have proof. Look, I said, showing her the video. Jessica's face tensed even more upon seeing it. With the evidence before her, she couldn't say anything in return and just hung her head low.
And Lucas, stealing money from the bank where you work, that's just the lowest of the low. You must have been in debt, right? How did you know that, Mom?
Now it was Lucas who started to tremble. To them, I must have seemed like a police officer about to question them about the crimes they had committed.
You see, the daughter of my florist's manager just started working as a new graduate at the same company as you this year, in the same department, no less. She told me that she saw you pocketing the money that customers entrusted to the bank. Being new and worried about making a false accusation against a senior, she hasn't spoken up about it to anyone. But I've thought to myself, if anyone at that bank would steal their own company's money, it would be you.
This is what I heard, so there's no evidence, but given that Lucas was giving Jessica a substantial allowance every month, never contributing any money to the house, and actually stealing from the household funds, it seemed likely to be true.
That's Smith. I educated her thoroughly, yet she's so ungrateful.
Lucas fumed, shaking with anger at the manager's daughter's betrayal. Hearing Lucas's words, I took it as an admission of his theft and seized the moment to lash out.
You educated her? You probably thought you were the most important person in this house, didn't you? Acting all high and mighty at work too, looking down on everyone else.
But too bad. That won't work with me.
This house is a prime example. I earned the money and bought this house with my own effort.
You're not the great one here.
Of course, I'm not saying I am either, but at least I won't let a house that I bought with money I worked hard for be taken away by you too.
Now, please leave immediately. My scream sent Lucas and Jessica fleeing from the house in terror. I breathed a sigh of relief. From tomorrow, I would no longer have to see those two. Just the thought made my heart feel lighter. Later, I reported Lucas and Jessica's crimes to the police. The police immediately looked into it. And frankly, there wasn't much to investigate. The evidence of Jessica's shoplifting and Lucas's theft was clear as day on the security cameras. They were taken away by the police without any fuss, and seeing my child and his wife being led away, I felt no stir of emotion. I could only think they had to fend for themselves now. Initially, I was pleased with my son and his wife's intentions to comfort me when we started living together, but as I lived with these two who did as they pleased, my stress accumulated. In retrospect, it's clear that when they brought up living with me, their true goal was to have me do all the housework while they lived comfortably. Saying goodbye to a life of being insulted and having money taken by Lucas and Jessica, I now feel refreshed. Even if they are released by the police, they'll be too busy paying off their debts. I'm certain their marriage will fall apart, given they can barely manage household chores. But I am resolute in my decision not to help them ever again. I've vowed to lead a life free from any ties to my eldest son and his wife. While continuing my part-time job at the flower shop, I've been putting even more effort into making jewelry. When I revealed that the flowers used in my jewelry came from the flower shop where I work, an unprecedented number of customers started to visit. Responding to customers' requests to use flowers as parts for their jewelry, I also began selling flowers specifically for this purpose. Manager showed concern, saying, "If your jewelry business is that successful, you could just focus on that," but I shook my head. After all, it was a hobby recommended to me by Manager Smith. I believe if using flowers from the florist in my jewelry helps the shop flourish, then that's the best outcome. I plan to continue walking this new path in life, enriched by both my work and my hobby.
I'm home, huh? Hey, why did you come back when you don't belong here anymore? What do you mean I don't belong here? I don't need someone who gives birth to a child with a cheating partner,
When I returned home after giving birth at my parents' house, my husband's parents were there, and all my clothes were gone. Not only that, but they were also calling my newborn child the offspring of an affair. There's a limit to how much they can mock someone.
Fine. I'll leave as you wish. But once I'm gone, where will you live?
I'll live here, of course.
I'll take this house as compensation for alimony. Do you really think you can do that? Because this house is.
My husband was so confident until he heard what I had to say. Then his smirk disappeared, and he turned pale, collapsing to his knees. I'm Yasmin, a 31-year-old homemaker. I met my husband, John, through a friend's introduction, and remarried after a year of dating. We both wanted children, but even after a year of marriage, we were not blessed with any. However, our marriage wasn't troubled aside from our inability to conceive, and I had built a good relationship with his parents.
This evening, my dad and mom are coming over. How about we go out for dinner?
Sure, I'll get ready. We decided to go out for dinner with his parents that day, but I quickly realized it was my mother-in-law's considerate gesture. After a year of marriage and no children, I started to think there might be something wrong with me. So, I recently began fertility treatments. But there were no visible results. I heard there are many reasons for infertility, and we didn't know why we couldn't have children. The journey with no end in sight was exhausting. I was beginning to dread going to the hospital to face no progress and was thinking of giving up on fertility treatments, but then my mother-in-law reached out to help. She had undergone fertility treatments to conceive my husband, so she understood my feelings the best. She comforted me over the phone after my hospital visits. The treatments were costly and unproductive, and she probably sensed my despair from my voice. Until a year ago, she was a stranger to me, but I was grateful for her kindness. With her support, I kept going with the treatments. Before entering the restaurant, I whispered a thank you to my mother-in-law, who smiled back warmly. I was glad they were my in-laws and enjoyed the dinner as a stress reliever from my fertility treatment. Then my husband had to go on a business trip, and we had to pause our efforts to conceive. I heard that continuity is important in fertility treatments, so I was disappointed, but work is work. Maybe taking a break from the stress of trying to conceive would help me recover mentally. I tried to see the positive side. Even after he left, my mother-in-law visited me weekly to take care of my mental health. She was the only one I could talk to about the hardships of fertility treatments and the loneliness of being apart from my husband. Thanks to my mother-in-law, I didn't have to feel that bad. Half a year flew by, and my husband's business trip ended. I was feeling much better mentally and knew I had to refocus on getting pregnant soon due to my age.
No way.
Yes.
Why are you shouting all of a sudden? What happened?
I'm pregnant. Our baby is finally coming. Seeing the 2 lines on the pregnancy test, I cried tears of joy. It had been a long-awaited pregnancy. We had overcome periods of anxiety and unsuccessful fertility treatments. I was overwhelmed with happiness, but my husband just gave a strained smile. Maybe he's not happy. No, that can't be the case. Perhaps he was just shocked and needed time to process the news. I shared the joy openly and immediately informed my parents and his. Both sets of parents were overjoyed, and I was too excited to sleep that night. I decided to focus on a healthy pregnancy. But the next day,
I assume you know, but I'm busy with work, so I can't help much around house duties. Don't bother me too much, okay?
His tone wasn't harsh, but I was at a loss for words. I felt good that morning after finding out about the pregnancy, but what did he mean by that? His strange smile from the day before and now this. Maybe he wasn't happy about the pregnancy. But that couldn't be true. We had overcome difficult times together to reach this point in our pregnancy. He was busy with work, so maybe there was no deeper meaning to his words. I planned to return to my parents' house for a while, so I didn't take it too seriously. But my discomfort with my husband's attitude began when my morning sickness started.
I don't know if it's morning sickness or what, but constantly buying ready to eat is expensive, and I can't relax after work. Give me a break, will you?
Sorry. I'll cook tomorrow.
There's no tomorrow for someone who can't do it today.
He must be stressed out because he is tired from work. I felt guilty for not being able to meet his expectations for housework and meals due to my severe morning sickness in my first pregnancy. But morning sickness won't last forever. Once it eases, I should be able to do more around the house and hopefully, our relationship will get back to normal. I thought. I can't just be soft on myself, especially for our upcoming child and my husband, who's always working hard. I pushed myself to cook and do housework as much as possible, even with the morning sickness, but it seems my efforts didn't reach him. Gradually, he stopped coming home at night and began spending his evenings out. My hormonal imbalances from the pregnancy made me feel mentally unstable. I worried if we couldn't resolve our issues before the baby's birth, could we really build a happy family of 3? Such anxieties continued on the nights he was absent. But as I struggled through each day, I suddenly found myself in the 7th month of pregnancy and decided to return to my parents' house. I had already discussed this with them and my husband. Honestly, I felt more at ease going back to my parents' house than staying with my husband. Perhaps feeling suffocated living with a pregnant wife, my husband readily agreed to my going back home. I took a 2-hour taxi ride to my parents' house.
Don't worry, we'll support you from now on.
I had told my mother weeks before about the deteriorating relationship with my husband, John. While admitting he was busy with work, I also vented my frustration about him not supporting me much. So, my mother had been worried about me, and since returning home, I've been able to relax truly, even managing to spend days without a single worry. It was something I hadn't experienced in a long time. I regretted not returning home sooner. The comfort at my parents' house was so good that I gave birth to a boy without any issues. He was slightly underweight but cried loudly and felt warm when I held him, bringing me to tears of indescribable joy. Busy with work, John couldn't be there for the birth, but my parents cried with me. Despite the hard times during the pregnancy, I was truly glad to have overcome them. I stayed in the hospital for a week after giving birth, with my parents visiting daily. However, John was noticeably absent. He congratulated me on the birth but didn't come to see our baby. Though I understood he was busy, I couldn't help feeling angry. Was his work more important than his child? But the excitement of spending days with my son overrode these feelings. That week felt incredibly long, but finally leaving the hospital with my baby made me truly feel like a mother. Hello. I was discharged from the hospital today. Though I had informed her by email, I called my mother-in-law to talk. She had supported me the most until I got pregnant, and I really wanted her to be the first to see her grandson. But since she lived far from my parents' house, I planned to show her the baby once things settled down.
John told me that you two are getting a divorce. Is that true?
What? Instead of congratulations, she hit me with this shocking news. That couldn't be true. Although John and I had been on bad terms before the birth, it wasn't to the extent of divorce. It was just stress on both sides, and now was an important time to care for our son together. I had no idea why she would say such a thing, but I firmly responded.
That's ridiculous. Please don't say such things. No, I'm serious.
She then explained that John indeed intended to divorce me. At first, I thought it was a cruel joke, but my kind-hearted mother-in-law wouldn't do such a thing. Her words seemed far-fetched, but not impossible. I calmed myself and decided to contact John. My heart raced and my body trembled as I dialed his number, hoping it was all a misunderstanding. Hello.
Hey, what's up? What do you mean what's up? Your mother told me that you want a divorce.
I didn't care for pleasantries. I just needed to confirm his true feelings. He hadn't been there for the birth or even to see our baby afterward. Perhaps he really wanted a divorce and didn't care about us. That's why what my mother-in-law was saying was believable, but I couldn't believe anything until I heard it from my husband's mouth. Please let this be a misunderstanding. I prayed while waiting for his answer, but reality was not so kind.
Oh, you've heard already? Well, that's right. I can't live with someone who cheats with another man and has his child.
A woman who cheats with another man. My husband, John, was under the misconception that I had an affair behind his back and gave birth to the other man's child. This was what I heard from my mother-in-law. It turned out that while I was away giving birth at my parents' house, John had been telling his parents that I was having an affair. I didn't know when he started to misunderstand, but his cold attitude towards me during my pregnancy and his absence at the birth were because of this reason. But did John really think I was cheating? Or was there some other reason he wanted a divorce? I couldn't tell, but I knew I had to talk to him in person, so I decided to return to our house a month after returning to my parents.
I'm home.
Huh?
Why did you come back?
I told you, you have no place in this house. It seemed John hadn't got my message about coming home today. Perhaps he had blocked my number. Well, it didn't matter to someone who was considering divorce. I wasn't surprised by his cold reception. I continued calmly without losing my composure.
Do you really intend to divorce me? There's no proof I cheated.
I know you've been cheating.
Plus, I've already moved my parents out and got rid of your stuff.
This house is mine now. John bragged with a smirk, heading to the living room. Following him, I saw my father-in-law and mother-in-law sitting at the dining table, and John, grinning, holding the divorce papers.
If we are to divorce, this house is mine since I got it from my parents. You should be the one leaving.
That's ridiculous. You cheated, so I'm taking this house as alimony. It's 3 against 1 here.
You don't stand a chance.
I hadn't done anything to be suspected of cheating. Seeing John's smirking face, I realized everything. He was framing me, thinking he had convinced his parents to be on his side. Was he under the delusion that by creating a 3 against 1 situation, he could take the house? He was gravely mistaken. I'm going to make him suffer from this, thinking that. I was about to argue, John said, we're moving out our stuff. The movers are here. But my mother-in-law retorted.
Trapping your wife is despicable. We're leaving.
John's face changed from confident smirking to palpable panic. But this was all part of the plan. He thought he had won over his parents, but he underestimated people. Without evidence, why would they believe his word? I had shared many concerns with my mother-in-law and built a strong relationship. Underestimating this was his downfall. After hanging up with John, I called his parents again. I shared what John had said and reiterated that I hadn't cheated. They then became my allies, confessing they had found John's recent actions suspicious. He had suddenly claimed I cheated and that he would take the house, suggesting they live together. They had been living in a rental, so living with John in a house would be financially beneficial. They suspected John was trying to leverage this to take the house from me. He might be clever in a way but careless in the end. And his parents, who knew him best, wouldn't be easily fooled. At this point, it was already decided that my in-laws and I would outsmart John, but one thing was still unclear. Why had John suddenly started this? Our long-awaited child was born, and everything should have been perfect. What happened to him? I didn't have the answer yet.
Stop pinning your own affair on others. We're leaving this house, so prepare for alimony and child support. Wait. Mom. What are you talking about? An affair.
John and I were both shocked by my mother-in-law's words. He was having an affair? What did that mean? Maybe because he cheated on me, I got in the way and was trying to kick him out. Was he trying to get rid of me to take the house I got from my parents? That's beyond despicable. He's trying to ruin my and my son's life and take a significant asset. Ridiculous.
Do you think you can get away with this? Wait. I haven't cheated.
Just yesterday, a private investigator gave us the findings. They were supposed to report back in a week, but they had more than enough evidence already, my father-in-law said, pulling out a large envelope from his bag. It contained several photos and a report about 20 pages long, stapled together. The first page read Investigation Results of Infidelity, with attached photos of John holding hands with a young woman. Disgusting. I glared at John, seeing him now as nothing more than a base creature driven by his desires. He seemed like nothing more than a creature driven recklessly by his own desires, less than an animal. I was speechless, but upon closely examining the photos, there were some capturing the moment he entered a hotel. Despite just having a child, it was apparent he had no awareness as a father. My feelings shifted from anger to utter disbelief. Had I really spent 3 years with such a worthless person? This is over now.
How are you going to excuse yourself?
No.
This is. Where's your responsibility as a father? You knew our marriage wasn't just about us anymore after I got pregnant. It was a momentary lapse. I'm truly sorry. There's no way a person who strays so easily can be a fit father. Don't joke around.
My rage, which had subsided for a moment, returned in full force as my husband tried to make excuses. I let out all my pent-up anger, slamming the table and yelling at John, who must have been frightened by the sight of me for the first time. He seemed frightened by this new side of me, backing away a couple of steps, hiding the divorce papers behind him.
What are you hiding? Just because you're in a bad spot now doesn't mean you can back out of the divorce. I'll grant your wish and ask for child support. No, wait. It's better than being a single parent. Enough. I'd rather raise him alone than have someone like you around.
He was clearly using the child as a shield now that he felt threatened. Despicable. I wouldn't let such a man claim fatherhood. My anger escalated to the point where I was almost about to lash out physically when.
We're sorry for the trouble. There's no need to get more upset. We'll take responsibility for our disgraceful son and ensure he pays child support. We'll make him leave the house today and handle the rest.
I managed to stop myself thanks to my in-laws' intervention. I contacted a lawyer regarding divorce procedure in front of him. He nervously looked at me. Within an hour, his belongings were packed, and he left with his parents for his new residence. Left alone in the room, I felt a sense of loss for a while, trying to calm my mind, but gradually, I started to feel relieved about the outcome. If such a man had a hand in raising my beloved son, he might have turned out as terrible as him. It was a relief that I could prevent it at an early stage. Moreover, having my in-laws on my side until the end was a stroke of luck. I felt a bit guilty about burdening them with their despicable son, but my son was my priority. They understood and took him away, for which I was immensely grateful. I immediately asked the lawyer to proceed with our divorce. Then I decided to sell the house. My ex-husband knew its location, and I couldn't risk him showing up in a fit of vengeance. Being alone with my son, I wouldn't stand a chance if my ex-husband tried something. I also wanted to erase all memories associated with him. The house, initially bought as an investment by my father, was in a prime location and sold quickly. With that money, I could live comfortably without working for a while. My plan is to stay with my parents, benefiting from their support while raising my son, at least until he's a bit older. Eventually, due to school considerations, I intend to move to the city. But that's a conversation for the future. For now, I'm focused on settling our current situation. My ex-husband, under his parents' supervision, is working hard to pay me, with his wages being managed by them. I've been meeting with my in-laws every 6 months to show them their grandchild, and during our last meeting, they told me something astonishing.
What? His affair partner was someone from his company? I thought he met her at a nightclub or something. Yes, that's right. We were just as shocked. It seems like it got out at the company. Because it was an office affair, he got fired. Now he's working at a factory owned by an acquaintance.
He had a somewhat senior position, so he was pretty down after getting fired, but that's irrelevant to us. I never imagined his affair partner was a junior at his workplace. It's appalling to think that someone in a leadership position could behave like that. It's clear why such a person could easily betray me and our son. After getting fired, my ex-husband John also seems to have been cut off by his affair partner. While she's also to blame, it's understandable if she resents John for getting fired. However, unlike John, she's young and has a chance to start over. My ex-husband, who is old enough, had no choice but to work at a factory that was acquainted with his parents-in-law. He's now working at a factory, with his wages being managed by his parents. They've arranged to pay child support in installments. Since his living expenses are covered by his parents, most of his salary goes to me. But what he'll do after that is anyone's guess. It's unlikely that a divorced man with no savings will remarry, and he can't even live with his child he once so desperately wanted. With no goals or purpose in life, it's clear he'll spend the rest of his days filled with regret, a fate he brought upon himself. I think he should feel the mistakes he's made throughout his life and regret it forever. A year has passed since then, and I'm still living with my parents, cherishing my son. Next week, we have our biannual dinner with my in-laws. We maintain a good relationship, and they always look forward to seeing their grandson. Despite my ex-husband being the worst, I want to keep a good relationship with my in-laws. In life, it's crucial to have people who care about you and whom you genuinely value. As for people like my ex-husband, who fit into neither category, it's best to cut ties and enjoy my life.
Get out of here by today, you old hag.
By today.
And get rid of all your stuff. It's just in the way around the house.
Karen made a shooing gesture. As I was getting annoyed, Mike cut in.
Listen. Don't leave a single piece of trash behind.
That was the last straw for me. Sighing, I muttered in response. Okay. Then I turned my back on the two of them. If you get caught cheating, you normally apologize, right? Why are they being so defiant about it? And they're telling me to leave because they want to live together? That's just ridiculous. They keep saying things that suit them, but do they not think I have incriminating evidence against them? Well, if that's the case, I don't mind. They should enjoy themselves while they can. I'll just continue preparing my revenge. I smirked to myself as I headed to my room. My name is Michelle Ogden. I've been married to my husband, Mike, for nearly 20 years. At 48, I'm working from home in design, and Mike, 2 years my senior, is thriving as a system engineer. Our son, Nick, born right after we got married, is now 19 and a respectable college student. You might imagine a happy family hearing this. But in reality, it's not the case. Lately, I've been suspicious of Mike's behavior. On weekends, he sneaks out of the house. Even on weekdays, he comes home pretty late. And when he's at home, he never answers the phone in front of me. It's clear as day he's cheating. If he's cheating, I guess divorce is the only option. Lately, I find myself thinking this more and more. Looking back, Mike's attitude changed a few years ago. It was when Nick was in middle school and our expenses started to pile up. Despite this, Mike's salary was gradually decreasing. When I asked why, Mike said, "The economy's bad, and the company's struggling." There wasn't much I could do. I cut back on our living expenses. But that wasn't enough. So, I thought about getting a job and discussed it with Mike. You know, I'm thinking of getting a part-time job. Huh? We're short on cash? There are Nick's tutoring fees too. I confided in Mike about our financial struggles. Then, suddenly, he started to get angry.
It's because you're wasting money.
I was taken aback by Mike's behavior. Sure, we had argued a few times before. But this was completely different from anything I'd experienced with him. Even though I thought something was off, I retorted. I don't waste money.
So, you're just a loser, huh?
Everyone's so incompetent. He continued complaining about how everyone at his company couldn't do their jobs right. He even had to help with sales, he grumbled. In the end, I gave up on discussing the matter with him. Then, a former colleague from the company I worked at before our marriage, who had recently started her own business, contacted me asking for help. It had been over a decade since I left that job when I got married. There was a bit of a gap, But I couldn't miss this opportunity. I eagerly accepted her offer. That's how I started working from home in design. Of course, I told Mike about it. But he just said okay. And didn't seem very interested. He barely listened to what I had to say. Nevertheless, I had officially informed him. I continued my work with pride. Then, on a certain weekday, while I was working, Nick unexpectedly came home. "I'm home." "What's up? Why are you home at this time?" It was just past noon. At that time, Nick was in middle school. He should have had classes until the evening and then club activities. There was no way he should be home at this hour. "Didn't I tell you today's the start of midterms?" I suddenly remembered. Looking at the calendar, it indeed had tests written on it. I forgot. "I'll get lunch ready right away." I hurried to prepare Nick's lunch. Then, from behind, Nick asked, "Mom, were you working?" "Huh? Your laptop is out, and there are all these documents." Nick was pointing at my work documents and laptop I had left on the living room table. "Oh, sorry. I'll clean it up right away." "No, it's okay, you can do it later. But there's something I want to talk to you about." Nick ran to his room. And soon returned with his tablet. "I'm making a game. I want to be an engineer like Dad." Nick showed me the game he had been creating on his tablet. It wasn't as polished as commercial games, but it was impressive nonetheless. "That's amazing. I want to go to a vocational school. Do you think Dad would agree? If you show him this, I'm sure he'll support you." I wholeheartedly supported Nick. But our hopes were soon shattered. When Mike saw Nick's game, he harshly criticized it. "This is a joke, right?" "But no, it's totally useless. I could make this in 10 minutes. Mike laughed mockingly. I was furious at his reaction. To a system engineer like Mike, Nick's game might seem like child's play. Offering professional advice is one thing, but mocking it is unacceptable. As I was about to complain, Mike continued to Nick. "If you have time to play around like this, you should be studying more. Think before you speak." When I interjected, Mike got annoyed. "What? You have a problem with my parenting?" "Yes, I do. You should respect our son's independence more." "Huh? Usually, it's the wife's job to educate the kids. If you did your job right, we wouldn't be having this issue." Mike raised his voice. I clammed up in the moment. It was useless arguing with him. I had to help Nick myself. In the end, I just listened to Mike's complaints in silence. I waited for his anger to subside. The next day, when Mike was not around, I said to Nick, "Nick, I'll buy you a computer for your game development studies." "Really?" "Yes. If your dad says anything, I'll say it's for my work." With this, I bought an expensive desktop computer for Nick, paying for it myself. Mike looked skeptical, but I asserted it was for my work. This incident gradually strained the relationship between Mike and me. I've been contemplating divorce. But it's not easy to bring it up because of Nick. These days, I've been feeling quite unsettled. On the other hand, Nick went off to college. He said he wanted to study his specialty in college and thought his dad wouldn't object. Nick had grown up to be quite clever. Maybe I can manage even if we get divorced. As I was thinking this, Nick came home from college one day. "Mom, listen." "What's up, Nick?" I stopped my work and looked up. Nick's face was noticeably pale. I felt anxious about what might have happened. Finally, Nick hesitantly began to speak. "I saw Dad cheating." "Dad's cheating?" When I asked for clarification, Nick elaborated. Nick's story went like this. He was heading to a lecture at college earlier. But then a friend informed him the class was cancelled. So they decided to hang out downtown. That's when he saw Mike walking arm in arm with a young woman. Nick pretended not to notice because his friends were there. But he couldn't bear it and came home.
I'm sorry. If it weren't for my friends, I would have confronted him on the spot.
That would have been tough. I understood Nick's difficulty. Putting that aside, I was already aware of Mike's infidelity. Reflecting on it, Mike had been acting oddly recently. He leaves early on weekends and comes home late on weekdays. He talks on the phone secretly when he's at home. It was impossible not to suspect something. That's why I had already requested an investigation into Mike's behavior. I already had the results. When I told this to Nick, he looked surprised and asked me, "So you were calm about it? Are you gonna divorce?" Well, the investigation results were positive, so probably. Okay. If that's your decision, I won't say anything. That made things easier. I intended to confront Mike when he came home that night. But he didn't return. He must have realized Nick had seen him. Mike finally came back the following Sunday, bringing an unfamiliar young woman with him. So this is the mistress. As I was thinking, the woman introduced herself. "Hello, I'm Karen. I've been dating Mike." Her insincere greeting infuriated me. Mike then spoke to me. "So, I'm gonna live with Karen. We're getting a divorce, so please leave." "What's the reason?"
A smart guy like me deserves a young girl, not an old lady like you.
Mike smirked. I couldn't believe his audacity but calmly responded, "Oh really? That's exactly what I wanted." I replied with sarcasm. Then Karen, looking irritated, pointed at me. "An old lady like you acting all high and mighty? Think you can live alone? Unfortunately for you, I work, so I'll be fine." "Then let's get divorced quickly." Karen took a divorce form from her pocket and tossed it at my feet. "I'll make sure to get alimony from both of you." Karen frowned in displeasure at my words. Meanwhile, Mike was grinning, waiting. I signed the divorce papers and handed them to Mike. At that moment, Karen said triumphantly, "Get out by today, you old hag. By today. And get rid of all your stuff. It's just in the way around the house." Karen made a shooing gesture. As I grew angry, Mike cut in. "Make sure not to leave a single piece of trash behind." That was the final straw. I sighed and muttered in response, "Okay." Then I turned my back on the two of them. When caught cheating, people normally apologize, right? Why are they being so defiant? And telling me to leave because they want to live together? That's just ridiculous. They've always said things that suit them, but do they not think I hold incriminating evidence? Well, if that's how it is, I don't mind. They'd better enjoy themselves while they can. I'll keep preparing my revenge. Smirking, I headed to my room. Before packing my belongings, I called the junk removal service. After arranging for them to collect the junk, I started packing. After a while, Nick returned home. I could hear Mike and Nick talking in the living room. But soon they started arguing. "It's because Dad cheated. Shouldn't you apologize to Mom first?" "Shut up. It's none of your business." After their conversation died down, it became quiet. Peeking into the living room, I saw only Nick. "Nick? Where's your dad?" "They left on a trip together. They're ridiculous." Nick stamped his foot. I felt relieved. With Mike gone, I could do as I pleased. Now was my chance for revenge. I smiled at Nick and said, "Nick, I'm divorcing and moving out, will you come with me?" "Of course." Then start preparing for the move. And also, I shared a plan with Nick. Hearing it, he willingly started packing. Soon, the junk removal guys arrived. I led them inside the house. Dispose of everything in these 2 rooms, the furniture and appliances. Everything? Even the new stuff? Yes. I'll buy new ones after moving. I asked them to dispose of the furniture and appliances in my room and Nick's. But not in the living room. Those were shared property with Mike. I didn't want to deal with complaints for disposing of them without permission. Anyway, I had them dispose of my things and those I bought. He'll regret it. Later that evening, I left the house. I entrusted my belongings to a moving company. I hadn't decided where to move yet, so I asked them to keep my stuff for a while. Nick and I moved to a nearby hotel. We planned to stay there temporarily. A few days later, during breakfast, Mike called. "Hello? What's up?"
What do you mean, what's up? Did you really throw away the furniture and appliances?
Huh? Of course. It was your idea, wasn't it? As I snapped back, Mike suddenly became tongue-tied, mumbling something indistinct. I scolded him. "You said to throw them away. Don't complain now." "Well, that's true, but..." He sounded hesitant. Of course, he needed that thing. I knew what Mike was searching for, and had deliberately said everything was disposed of. As I thought this, Mike started to grovel. "Which company did you use for disposal? Why does that matter?" "Well, I'm looking for something." I smirked to myself, thinking, just as I suspected. Then, I asked him, feigning innocence. "Looking for something? The fridge, washing machine, and TV are all there, aren't they? Your stuff is untouched." "No, not that, it's about a computer." Just as I thought. Mike was looking for the computer I bought for Nick. I hinted at it. "A computer? I bought that for Nick. It's mine too, so I plan to dispose of it."
You haven't disposed of it yet?
His voice suddenly rose. Caught in my trap, I continued. "Yes. I thought selling it on a marketplace app would be better."
Please, give me back that computer.
Huh?
It's mine. Why should I give it back?
Mike was speechless. But this wasn't satisfying enough for revenge. So, I made a proposition. "How about this? Will you buy it from me?" "Buy it?" "Yes. I was planning to sell it anyway, so I'll sell it to you." Mike's voice brightened. "Okay. It's used, so how about $1,000? "What? That's too low. Let's say $20,000. "What? That's a rip-off." His voice grew louder in irritation.
You don't have to buy it. Why do you want a used computer anyway?
When I asked, Mike began to panic. "Well, that's just. You could just buy a new computer," I suggested.
Fine. I'll pay $20,000 for it. Sell it to me.
Thrilled inside, I informed Mike that we had a deal. Later, Mike insisted on receiving the computer immediately, but I had left it with the movers. So, I told him he'd have to wait until I settled into my new place. Despite his complaints, Mike reluctantly agreed. A few days later, I finally found a new place. With Nick's help, I moved into my new home. Right after that, Mike transferred the payment for the computer. I handed the money to Nick. "Nick, use this money to start living on your own," I said, seeing it as a perfect opportunity. Nick began living alone in an apartment near his college. I eventually sent the computer to Mike's house. But I removed the external disk first. Then, I sent that disk to Mike's company, along with a letter to his boss. Soon after, I received a call from Mike's boss, and was asked to visit his company on a specified day. At Mike's company, I announced my name at the reception and waited. A man slightly older than me appeared. "Hello. I'm Smith, the department head. Are you Mrs. Ogden, the one who sent the letter?" "Yes, thank you for your time. Please come to my office," he said, leading the way. We reached his office, where a somber-looking Mike was seated on a sofa. "Michelle. Why are you here?" Mike exclaimed, standing up suddenly. "I'm here for my revenge," I said, smiling, as Mike turned pale. Mr. Smith then intervened. "Let's begin our discussion," he suggested, changing Mike's expression. Mike sat down, sweating, as Mr. Smith placed the external disk I sent on the table. "First, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Ogden, what's this about?" Mr. Smith asked, placing the external disk of the computer on the table. It was the one I had sent to him. Meanwhile, Mike quickly averted his gaze. "I don't know what this is about. But this was sent by your ex-wife. Moreover, it contains our company's client data?" Mr. Smith gave Mike a stern look. Mike began to stammer out an excuse. "It must have gotten mixed in by accident. Our company strictly prohibits taking client data off-site. That's a mistake, Mike should just tell the truth." I was inwardly laughing. This was a little before Mike and I got divorced. He had been acting strangely. One day, when I returned from shopping, Mike was inexplicably sitting in front of Nick's computer. In the living room. Of course, the pretense was that I used it. But there was no reason for Mike to use it, since he had his own computer in his room. Curious, I covertly watched him. He did something on it and then turned it off. I pretended not to notice and checked the computer's contents the next afternoon. There were unfamiliar data files written on the external disk. Looking inside, it was some kind of database. I had a sudden realization. Mike took company data home, using someone else's computer as a hiding place. How low, I thought. Shortly thereafter, we got divorced. And I took the computer with me. Did Mike not expect me to dispose of it? Maybe he thought I would leave it behind since Nick was using it. Regardless, Mike must be regretting it now. Looking at him, he seemed about to cry. "What's going on? Speak clearly." "I'm sorry." Mike finally admitted his guilt. Afterward, Mr. Smith scolded Mike severely. Then Mr. Smith said, "Taking company data is a theft crime or a violation of the Unfair Competition Prevention Act."
What? No way.
"I'm going to press charges." As soon as Mr. Smith said this, Mike burst into tears. He apologized to Mr. Smith.
"I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." "No way. You'll face both criminal and civil responsibilities."
"But, oh no." Mike broke down crying. Watching Mike crumble in tears, I couldn't stop laughing inside. That's what you get for doing strange things. Serves you right. I was thinking about getting revenge for the infidelity when suddenly there was a knock on the door. Then a woman's voice. "Did you call, Mr. Smith?" "Ah, yes, come in." I recognized that voice. As I was thinking, the door opened. "Excuse me,"
Ah!
I exclaimed as the woman entered. At the same time, she looked at me. Then she shouted,
Ha! Why are you here?
It was Karen who raised her voice. It's complicated."
Shut up. This is no place for an old lady like you."
She then quickly covered her mouth, noticing Mr. Smith's red face. Mr. Smith, clenching his jaw, gestured for Karen to sit down. She quietly sat where Mike had been. Once she was seated, Mr. Smith asked her, "So, Karen, I have a question. You're planning to start your own business, right?" Yes." "In the same field as our company?" Mr. Smith looked at her sternly. Feeling pressured, Karen answered hesitantly. Mr. Smith's conversation then reached a critical point. "You're also in charge of managing customer data, right? Is everything okay on your end?" Mr. Smith asked Karen.
What do you mean?"
Karen was sweating profusely. At that moment, I realized something. These two were in cahoots. They planned to take out the customer data together. In essence, here's what was happening. Mike and Karen both extracted customer data from their respective companies. Karen was to start her own business first, using that data. And then Mike would join her to run the business together. Once I understood their plan, it wasn't interesting anymore. Just trying to succeed using others' efforts. How pathetic. I sighed. Meanwhile, the conversation continued. Mr. Smith was pressing Karen. I had my subordinates investigate, and it seems there has also been a data leak. Looks like you were involved, weren't you? Karen looked down, but then raised her head to start making excuses.
No, it's not true. This is all because of Mr. Ogden.
As she started to blame Mike, he got angry. He stood up and began complaining to Karen. Blaming me? You were the one who started this.
I don't know anything about that. You did this on your own. What? You said you wanted to marry me, so.
I was disgusted by their petty excuses. I took out a document from my bag, placed it on the table, and addressed Mike and Karen, who were bickering. This is the result of your affair investigation. By the way, your girlfriend here has another boyfriend.
What?
Mike hurriedly grabbed the document on the table, which included a photo of Karen holding hands with another man.
Karen, what's this about? That's none of your business. Shut up. You tricked me.
Mike raised his voice. I couldn't help but comment on their ugly scene.
Younger men are obviously better than old guys like you.
Mike suddenly became quiet, perhaps recalling what he had said to me earlier. Well, anyway, you'll both have to take responsibility, Mr. Smith interjected.
Wait a minute. This is a crime. Save your excuses for the police station.
With Mr. Smith's stern words, Karen was left speechless. Afterward, the company pressed charges against Mike and Karen. They were soon arrested for theft and other charges. Additionally, the company filed a civil lawsuit for damages against them. Naturally, Karen's plan to start her own business was ruined. Her boyfriend apparently left her too. Now, both charged with theft and violations of the Unfair Competition Prevention Act, they're busy making excuses in court. But I doubt their excuses will hold up. The outcome of the trial will be interesting to watch. Even if they end up with a fine, I doubt they'll be able to pay it. I'm glad I got my alimony before all this happened. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying living alone. My design work is going well, and my income is stable. It seems Nick has a girlfriend now, and I'm looking forward to many exciting things. Maybe I'll have grandchildren causing a ruckus soon, but for now, I'm enjoying the quiet life. This place is practically my home now, so you better serve me well. When I got home, for some reason, my estranged mother-in-law was there, making an outrageous statement.
What?
Shocked by my mother-in-law's words, I blurted out in astonishment. I had been in Hawaii for my sister's wedding, away for 3 nights and 4 days. It seems that while I was gone, my mother-in-law had moved in and settled into our house. And the person who facilitated this was none other than her son, my husband. I confronted my husband about what all this meant, but what he told me was beyond my wildest expectations. My name is Emily. I'm a 29-year-old sales professional. During my student days, I was dedicated to my studies and landed a job at a major insurance company right out of college. People often refer to me as a career woman. Indeed, I love my job and have been working hard every day. However, I was hopeless in love, never having had a proper relationship. But then, a turning point came in my life. That day was busier than usual, full of appointments with clients. I was about to head to a client's house to finalize a contract, but left the office at the last minute. Rushing, I grabbed the necessary documents and left the office. I hope I can make it in time, I muttered as I hurried towards the station. Just then, I thought I heard someone calling my name and turned around. A man was running desperately towards me.
Emily! Wait, please!
Sean? It was Sean from my department, who works in administration. We hadn't talked much, just exchanged greetings. Catching up to me, Sean, panting, handed me some documents. What's this? It was the document I needed for the client I was about to meet. What? Why do you have this document? Confused, I checked the documents I had brought, only to find they were for another client. In my rush, I had taken the wrong papers.
I happened to pass by your desk and noticed these documents left behind, so I rushed to catch up with you. Luckily, I made it in time.
Thank you.
Without these, I would have lost the client's trust.
I thanked him repeatedly. I was shaken by such an unusual mistake, but he just smiled at me like the sun.
Glad I could help, Emily. Be careful out there.
Thanks to him, I was able to secure the contract that day. This incident led to us talking more often, going out for meals, and eventually, we started dating naturally. He was 2 years older than me, a calm and cheerful person. After dating for exactly 2 years, we decided to get married. I was looking forward to a happy married life, but soon after the wedding, a problem arose with my mother-in-law. My father-in-law had passed away 5 years ago, and she lived alone. Her house was close to ours, so she often came over to ask for money.
Emily, you're making good money, right? How about sharing some of that as pocket money?
My mother-in-law, smirking, cooed these words. Before we got married, I thought she was a reserved and nice person, but she showed her true colors as soon as we tied the knot. Despite repeatedly telling her I can't give you money, she kept insisting, and I was getting fed up. She seemed to be a big spender, using up money as soon as she had it. To top it all off, she even called my sister, asking her for money, which really got under my skin. So, I decided to talk to Sean, my husband, about it.
Hey, can you tell your mom to stop asking for money? She's even calling my sister now. You said I shouldn't bother with her, but why should we have to put up with this? Please, tell your mom to stop.
Eh?
Oh, yeah. I'll talk to her next time.
Sean's response was vague and he never actually talked to his mom about it. After we got married, I learned that Sean seemed to have a bit of a mama's boy streak. In his eyes, I was probably the bad one for speaking ill of his beloved mother. No matter how many times I brought it up, Sean would just say, "That's just how mom is. You don't have to give her any money. Just ignore her." He suggested that I just grin and bear it. As expected, he never really talked to his mom about stopping her behavior. On top of that, my mother-in-law constantly criticized the way I did household chores, which really annoyed me. Meanwhile, as she got older and her health declined, she began hinting at wanting to move in with Sean and me in our spacious house. Since she never outright said it, I avoided the topic. However, one day, Sean brought it up.
Hey, mom's getting older and feeling insecure, so she wants to live with us. I think it's a good idea. You're okay with that, right, Emily?
Sean asked this with a smile, but I firmly rejected the idea.
Live together? No way! I absolutely refuse.
Sean didn't like my response and lashed out at me.
What's with that attitude? Mom's just trying to be nice by saying she wants to live with us. Then let me ask you, what's in it for me? It's stressful enough dealing with her constant money demands and never-ending criticism of my housework. Even living apart is already taking a toll on me mentally. There's no way I can live with her 24/7. What do you mean, what's in it for me? We're family. Did you marry me just for the benefits?
Our argument escalated into a shouting match and lasted for a while. In the end, neither of us budged, and our argument continued into the next day. In the midst of this, my sister's wedding in Hawaii was approaching, and I was busy preparing my dress and other things. My parents had passed away in a car accident 3 years ago, and since I'm estranged from other relatives, my sister, Katie, who's 3 years older than me, is the only blood relative I have. We've been close since we were kids and I could tell her anything, even things I couldn't share with our parents. I was as happy as if it were my own wedding when I heard she was getting married and was really looking forward to her wedding. The wedding date was set before Sean and I got married, so I planned to attend alone. About 5 days into our argument, Sean unexpectedly apologized. "Sorry, I went too far. If you don't want to live with Mom, we don't have to."
Really?
I was relieved by his words.
Thank you. I'm sorry for being so assertive, too. No worries. By the way, your sister's wedding is coming up, right? You're gonna be in Hawaii for 3 nights and 4 days. Have a great time.
I smiled back at Sean, beaming with joy. Thank you. I'll take lots of photos and videos. And so, we made up and spent the days leading up to my sister's wedding in a peaceful, happy mood. On the wedding day in Hawaii. The venue was beautiful, with a magnificent view of the pristine sea through large windows. My sister, Katie, looked stunning in her wedding dress, and her happy smile brought tears to my eyes several times. Katie's husband, Ken, was a reliable and wonderful person whom I had met several times. I felt at ease knowing she was in good hands with him. I wholeheartedly celebrated their union. After the wedding, having enjoyed my sightseeing, I returned to Japan after my 3-night, 4-day stay. I'm home! I called out as I opened the front door of my house. To my surprise, it was my mother-in-law who appeared. Welcome back, Emily. You're here? I was shocked, and she snorted in response. Here? This is practically my home now, so you better serve me well. What? Astonished by her words, I hurried to the living room, where, as expected, I found Sean lounging on the sofa. What's going on? Why is your mom here? You said we didn't have to live together. Making such a fuss as soon as you get back. I lied about not living together. I moved mom's stuff in while you were in Hawaii, so we're all living together starting today. His casual declaration infuriated me. It seemed Sean had planned to sneakily move his mother in while I was away for my sister's wedding. So you tricked me? It's not tricking. Don't be so dramatic. This is a perfect chance for you to show some filial piety. After all, you don't have your real parents anymore, so why not make the most of this opportunity? His smirking response disgusted me. My mother-in-law chimed in, exactly. You should value your in-laws more. Start with giving me a massage. That's right, Emily. Make sure to massage mom daily. And about mom's room, the second floor will be hard for her to climb, so let's turn the first floor room into her room. Their presumptuous planning was too much for me, and I raised my voice. Stop joking around. This is horrible. Sean frowned and snapped at me. What's with that attitude? Like it or not, we're living together starting today. If you don't like it, leave. Stunned by his outburst, he added insultingly, well, your parents are gone, and you have nowhere else to go, do you? Feeling my feelings for Sean drop to freezing, I made my decision. Fine. Let's get a divorce. I'll handle everything. They both laughed loudly at this. Try if you think you can. Do you even have the guts to divorce? You have nowhere to go. But sure, I agree with the divorce. You're not even cute. Always acting so high and mighty just because you can do a bit of work. Sean's right. You don't even give us an allowance, and you're so defiant. A daughter-in-law like you should just leave. Their verbal abuse continued, but I had already decided to part ways with them and kept silent. Taking advantage of my silence, the two of them continued to spew insults. However, I ignored them. Pulled out my phone and made a call to someone. The phone rang, and I waited for the other party to answer. What are you doing? Who are you calling? Sean asked curiously, but I began to speak as soon as my call was answered. Hey, Katie? Yes, I had called my sister, Katie. Emily, thank you so much for coming to the wedding. Are you back home now? Yes, I'm back. The wedding was wonderful. Congratulations again. I called because I've made a decision and wanted to tell you right away since I've worried you so much. As I spoke, Sean and my mother-in-law watched with bated breath, wondering what was happening. I've decided to divorce Sean. As for the house, it's too big for just me, and I have no plans to rebuild it. I'll take this opportunity to settle the house and land issue. I declared this confidently, leaving Sean and my mother-in-law stunned, exclaiming, What? My sister Katie was happy with my decision and said, "Let me know if there's anything I can do to help." I thanked her and hung up the phone. At that moment, Sean started yelling at me.
What are you doing, deciding all this by yourself? You plan to clear the land and the house? Don't joke around. Yeah, right. After all, Sean is the legal owner of the land and the house, isn't he? You can't just decide something like this on your own.
His mother's words made Sean falter, and he stammered, well, that is. Seeing their confused faces, I clarified firmly.
You seem to be mistaken, but I am the legal owner of this house and land. What, really? But Sean said he was the owner.
She raised her voice in disbelief, turning to Sean. You are the owner, right, Sean? Sean stayed silent, not answering her. I spoke to him calmly.
I had a feeling, but you really did lie to your mother about being the owner.
Why would you do that? Sean burst out.
I was mad that you earn more than me. I couldn't get a loan for this house with my salary, so it ended up being in your name. It hurt my pride as a man. So, to my mom.
So, you lied about being the owner to save face. I cut him off, and he admitted in a mumble, yeah, I did. I just kept telling her that until I started believing it myself. Sean and I work at the same place, but our jobs and salaries are quite different. Me in sales and him in administration. I earn substantially more, thanks to my hard work and the support of my colleagues. But honestly, Sean's salary was so low it was hard to believe he worked at the same company. Yet, there were others in the same clerical jobs as Sean who were earning a decent wage. Sean would say, working in a clerical job doesn't mean anything. It's not worth it. He lacked motivation at work and was always waiting for instructions. Even when he had tasks to do, he quickly delegated them to his juniors. His personality was likable enough that he wasn't completely ostracized in the department, but it was clear he wasn't a welcome presence. Despite his disdain for clerical work and tendency to slack off, Sean had no desire to transfer to another department or find a job that paid better. People's salaries go up when they get promoted. Unlike sales where your salary can decrease if you don't produce results, clerical jobs are stable, he would nag at me. With such a salary gap, it wasn't possible to simply split our daily burdens in half. Consequently, I was the one covering most of the mortgage and living expenses. His mother thought Sean had built our house and often praised him, oblivious to the shocking truth that I was the one shouldering the financial burden. However, upon learning the truth, she turned to me, her face filled with panic, and asked desperately,
Hey, tell me the story you just told is a lie, right? What will happen to Sean and me if you're really going to sell the house and land? I've already vacated my old house thinking I was moving here.
I don't know.
Sean and I are getting divorced, so we'll be strangers from now on. You two need to figure out your future on your own.
As I said this coldly, Sean clung to me.
Hey, let's not get divorced. I was wrong earlier. I got carried away. I can't do without you, Emily. Divorce is definitely off the table.
Realizing his uncertain future, he desperately clung to me as if seeing the crisis for the first time. I sighed deeply.
Do you think everything will be forgiven just because you apologize? I can't continue to be with you, Sean. I don't even want to see your face. I'm going to a hotel for now, but I'll proceed with selling the house and land.
Hearing this, the two of them turned pale and trembled.
I can't move out immediately, so I'll give you some time. But if you continue to live here without doing anything, I'll eventually take you to court and evict you. You should start looking for a new place to live.
Saying this, I left the house with my belongings. Wait. Sean and his mother tried to stop me, but of course, I ignored them. Even after that, Sean kept dragging out the divorce, but I had recorded all the verbal abuse from him and his mother. The divorce was easily granted during mediation. My biggest worry, that Sean and his mother wouldn't leave the house, turned out to be an unfounded concern. Perhaps it was because I had firmly declared I would evict them through a lawsuit, but as soon as the divorce was finalized, they fled as if running away. Thanks to this, I was able to demolish the house and turn the land into an empty lot. While I could have sold the house as is, it seemed in this area, more people were interested in building custom homes than buying existing ones. Selling just the land seemed more appealing, so despite some demolition costs, I decided it was more beneficial to have an empty lot. While the land was being cleared, Sean and his mother, having lost their place, apparently moved to public housing. I chose a new place to live, moved in, and at the same time, quit my job. The reason for quitting was because I couldn't stand to see Sean anymore and didn't want to continue working in the same place. Plus, my new home was quite far from the company. Now, I'm working hard at a new job. This new job is actually at a company run by my sister's husband, Ken. I had been discussing Sean and his mother with my sister, and out of sympathy, she had been advising me to get a divorce. Ken had always spoken highly of my work performance, and after my divorce and quitting my job, he invited me to work at his company. I was officially headhunted by Ken's firm, which, like my previous employer, dealt with insurance. It was essentially a competitor in the same industry. At the new company, I've been working hard and achieving great results. Feeling liberated after the divorce, I can focus on work without any reservations, making my days enjoyable. I'm so glad you joined our company, Emily. You're getting great feedback from customers and bringing in contracts one after another. You've exceeded our expectations. Thank you so much. Ken praised me for my work, so I became even more motivated and worked hard every day. Word of my reputation even reached my old company, which regretted losing a valuable employee and was scrambling to recover. In an industry prone to high turnover, my divorce and subsequent job change made people treat Sean like a pariah. His inability to work independently became apparent once he was isolated. He had relied on his charm and likability to seem productive, but without that, he was just a lackluster mid-level employee. As the tasks he could handle dwindled, so did his connections with colleagues. Unable to bear the cold treatment, Sean eventually quit. I heard from former coworkers that his job search was tough, and he and his mother were living frugally. His mother started working part-time, but being naturally lazy, she didn't understand the demands of working in society. She frequently skipped work without notice and was quickly fired. She called me once, begging for help. "Emily, please, help us. I can't stand this poor life anymore. Sean's always irritable and yells at me. Please, take him back or at least lend us some money." Her cries seemed forced. Probably just to gain sympathy. I refuse. "Why should I help you?" I replied coldly. "Don't say that. We were family. Don't you feel sorry for an old woman like me? If getting back with Sean is too much, then at least give us some money." "I won't get back with your son, nor will I give you money. Don't call me again." I firmly stated my piece and unilaterally ended the call. Immediately, I blocked my ex-mother-in-law's number. Of course, I had already set Sean's number to be blocked as well. Since we were divorced and the property division was settled, there was no need for me to contact either of them again. Finally, I felt relieved to have blocked those numbers, just to be safe. A year has passed since then, and I'm still working hard at Ken's company. I don't have a boyfriend, but I'm done with romance for now and am satisfied with my current way of life. My sister and I remain close and meet often. Recently, I found out she's pregnant, and I'm eagerly looking forward to the birth of a new member in our family. One day, while working in the area where I used to live with Sean, I saw a man in shabby clothes, with messy hair and a bushy beard, picking up cans under a bridge. Taking a closer look, I was shocked to realize it was Sean. Seeing his pitiable state, I couldn't help but stop in my tracks. I had heard from former coworkers that Sean's job search wasn't going well because he limited himself to clerical work. With his personality and inherent cheerfulness, he could have found other jobs even if they weren't in administration. Back when we were still a happy couple, I had even suggested he switch to a field where he could utilize his talents. It pained me to realize that my words had never resonated with him. But we are strangers now. His current situation is the result of choices Sean himself made. It's not my place to say anything, so I looked away and walked straight ahead.
I work for a big corporation, so I'll work for both of us, no worries.
That's what Tom said when we were engaged, but as soon as we got married, he completely changed. He and his son, Mike, started hurling verbal abuse at me every day. On top of that, he took control of our finances, skimping on household expenses. He would complain about every meal I cooked, even though he asked me to make them. Fed up, I declared divorce to Tom and left the house. Then one day, I ran into Mike by chance.
Hey! I heard you're on welfare now.
I was taken aback.
What? You must be mistaking me for someone else.
He smirked. Come on, don't try to pretend. Mike twisted his mouth into a sneer.
Listen, you and I are done. Don't come crying to me about being broke, 'cause I'm not lending you a dime. Remember that.
Before I could retort, he had vanished into the crowd. Feeling the stares of passers-by, I hung my head and shook my shoulders. I couldn't help but laugh. Poor thing. He doesn't know anything. I can't wait to see his reaction when he finds out the truth. I'm Susan, a 50-year-old housewife. I married Tom 5 years ago. When we first met, he seemed like a perfect gentleman. We met at a gathering of mutual acquaintances, and he was fun to talk to, very friendly, and seemed really nice. As we were parting, he said, "I'd like to meet just the two of us next time." I was feeling sad about saying goodbye, so I agreed. When we started dating, I learned he had a son named Mike from his previous marriage. Mike was in 5th grade then, and I had dinner with him a few times. He was a bright and nice kid, just like his father. A year later, Tom proposed to me, and I decided to open up to him.
I work part-time and live with my parents, right? Actually, the company I joined right out of college was a nightmare, and it wrecked my health.
Is that so? He said.
It was tough even quitting. I don't think I can work long hours anymore.
Then Tom smiled kindly.
Just stay at home without overdoing it. Look, I work for a big corporation. I'll work for both of us, no worries.
Comforted by his words, I accepted his proposal. I truly thought I had found a good man and looked forward to a happy married life. Little did I know, in less than 6 months, I'd face utter despair. As we got used to living as a family of 3, Tom and Mike's behavior took a drastic turn. They started criticizing and mocking everything I said or did.
Mom's bedridden again? What about my lunch?
One morning, Mike came to my bedroom, frowning in displeasure. I had fallen ill after participating in a community event at a local church the day before. It was an unseasonably hot day, and I wasn't feeling well, so I had asked Tom to help, but he refused with an annoyed look.
Must be nice to be a stay-at-home mom. You can slack off all year. It's my rare day off, let me rest. I understand.
Pushing myself to attend had resulted in being unable to get up the next morning.
I'm sorry, Mike. I couldn't prepare your lunch, so please buy something from Walmart.
As I handed him the money, Mike grumbled discontentedly.
Mom, can't you at least make a decent lunch? You're always taking shortcuts with frozen stuff or leftovers from dinner.
His words stung me deeply.
Don't blame your mom, Mike.
Tom chimed in, passing by in the hallway with a half-smirk.
With the effort she's saving on lunch, I bet dinner's gonna be extravagant.
Ah, right.
Should I expect something fancy like roast beef, or maybe crab and salmon roe shipped directly from Maine?
I'm looking forward to it.
As a full-time housewife, you've got plenty of time to spare for dinner, right? You're not sleeping all afternoon, I hope. And make sure to do the house cleaning thoroughly, no slacking off.
Both of them chuckled at my exhausted state, threw out their unreasonable lines, and left. There's no way I can prepare such a luxurious meal. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and let out a heavy sigh. The reason is simple: Tom is incredibly stingy. Despite being a department head in a major corporation and earning a substantial salary, the allowance he gives me is ridiculously meager.
It's my salary, so why should I let my wife manage it? He argued after we got married.
I didn't oppose him, quietly complying. I believed that as long as the household finances were managed properly, it didn't matter who was in charge. Then, Tom started spending money recklessly.
It's necessary for work. Social drinking is a business expense.
It's essential. While he splurges on expensive clothes and watches for himself, he makes a fuss even if I spend $1 on a snack. Insisting that a housewife doesn't need pocket money, I have to report to Tom and get permission for every expense, whether it's a trip to the salon or buying clothes.
One pair of jeans should be enough, right? You're buying another one?
I need a warm one for winter.
Fine, but buy it cheap.
And I want to get a haircut. Can I go to the salon every 2 months to maintain my hairstyle?
Huh? What's the point of you dressing up? Keep your long hair as it is, then you only need a haircut every 6 months. I won't allow it.
So, I'm only allowed to buy cheap makeup from dollar stores. Even when I plead to change to better products because my skin is getting rough, he doesn't listen. Furthermore, the household budget he gives me is a third of the average. No wonder our nutrition is unbalanced. When I complained, Tom just shrugged it off.
They managed with this amount on that TV budgeting show. But that lady's family owned a farm, and she got vegetables and rice from them. It's impossible with the high cost of living here. Managing that is your job, isn't it?
I was frustrated not just by his stinginess with the household budget, but also by his attitude towards my father's funeral contribution. When my father, who had been ill, passed away, Tom blatantly showed his reluctance.
We don't need to give a funeral contribution, right? Anyone attending the funeral, other than the immediate family, gives a contribution. Then use your savings. I'm not involved.
He said this to me, tear-streaked and preparing for the funeral in my mourning clothes. His complete lack of consideration for me infuriated me.
I don't intend to ask for your contribution, so don't worry. Good. But wait, do Mike and I really have to go? It's going to ruin our long weekend. Such a drag.
Really, Dad?
I was planning to play a new video game.
Though they complained, I never doubted they would attend. However, when Tom and Mike finally showed up late, they didn't greet my mother or relatives. My exhausted mother didn't have the energy to criticize them, but my relatives were furious.
What's Tom thinking? It's too cold-hearted for his father-in-law's funeral. And Mike, after receiving so many gifts and money from your father.
I apologized profusely to my relatives, feeling my affection for them rapidly cooling. Tom, in his stylish suits, and Mike, attending a prestigious private university, were popular in the neighborhood as a handsome father-son duo. But at home, they did nothing but spew verbal abuse at me. Instead of coming straight home after work or school, they'd wander around, returning with the scent of lipstick and perfume. While they did whatever they pleased, they treated me like a maid, demanding luxurious meals despite the meager food budget. Recently, when I served dishes made with chicken or pork, Mike and Tom would glare at me disdainfully and lash out.
Don't you want to serve a good meal to a husband who's been working all day? If I get sick eating this poor man's food, how are you going to take responsibility? Call yourself a mother? I can make tasty meals even with chicken or pork. And if you're picky about eating vegetables and fish, you'll end up ruining your health.
We're saying we'd eat it if it was high-end seafood.
Stop yapping if you can't satisfy us with your cooking. I don't need to be lectured by you.
They used to eat despite complaining, but recently they've started leaving food untouched. Yet, if I don't cook, they berate me for slacking off as a wife. It's such a waste, so I end up eating it for breakfast or lunch the next day, wondering whom I'm cooking for as tears well up in my eyes. As for their meals, they get by with store-bought lunches, ramen noodles, and snack foods. Eventually, Tom was diagnosed as pre-diabetic during a company health check, and Mike started gaining weight. It was a predictable outcome. Then, they lashed out at me.
How dare you, as a wife, make your husband and son sick? We don't need a useless woman like you. Let's get a divorce. Then, I'll leave.
I agreed readily, which took them by surprise.
Are you okay with that, being jobless? You've been living off me, how will you survive now?
Don't worry about me.
I'll sign the divorce papers later and send them to you. Just leave my stuff until the movers come to pick it up. Nobody's gonna take your junk.
Tom sneered.
Ah, you'll regret leaving a handsome, high-earning guy like me. You won't find another kind husband who'd let you be a housewife with 3 meals and naps.
Right.
You've been living in luxury off Dad's money.
You'll struggle now. While I packed my clothes in a suitcase, Tom and Mike kept ranting. I envied how highly Tom thought of himself. During our dating days, this overconfidence seemed shining and confident.
You're going back to your mom's, right? Say hi to her living on her pension. You too will be living the poor life. Hey Mike, I bet they'll end up on welfare.
Tom's prediction made Mike laugh out loud.
You already reek of poverty. Combined with Grandma, they'll be the ultimate pair. The recent funeral was so stingy, it felt like poverty was seeping in. I thought the same. Call it a family funeral or a poor man's funeral. I want a grand event, Mike.
Got it, Dad.
But for us, poverty's like a different world, with Dad in a major corporation and me at a prestigious university.
I was boiling with anger at their audacity, but realized it was pointless to react and let it all slide. Returning home, I confided in my mom, who lowered her voice.
I sensed something was off with Tom and Mike at the funeral. But I didn't want to intrude too much into my daughter's family. Plus, with your father's illness, I know you couldn't speak up. I'm sorry for suddenly showing up. It's fine. I've been lonely without someone to talk to. Why don't you stay here? Thanks, but once I get my job on track, I'm planning to move to an apartment.
While I appreciated my mom's concern, living together might make me too dependent. Living nearby and visiting occasionally seemed the right balance. Tom and Mike mocked me for being jobless, but in reality, I'd been working from home. It all started with my budget cooking blog. Receiving many positive comments, I boldly launched a cooking website, which quickly gained a readership and became popular online. Then, an editor from a major publishing house approached me, and now I'm slowly preparing to publish a cookbook. Thanks to this, I've been too busy to dwell on the divorce, and days flew by. One day, my phone rang incessantly. Pausing from stir-frying ingredients, I answered.
Hello? Hey! What's this about alimony?
I sighed, expecting this topic.
You and Mike hurled enough abuse at me, didn't you? Oh, I thought, never mind.
Relief in his voice, Tom abruptly continued.
I haven't cheated on you or anything. Wait, did you record our verbal abuse? Your memory alone won't cut it. I've noted everything in a journal in detail. Try filing for alimony then. Poor people always talk about money. Let's see if you can actually get it.
Tom snapped and hung up the phone. After finishing cooking, I went to a private investigator and requested an investigation into Tom's behavior. Soon, his affair with a coworker was uncovered. The day after I sent photos and the investigation report to his company, Tom called me again.
You're so low, exposing it to my company. My furious manager reported it to the higher-ups, and now I'm fired. Oh, wasn't the woman his daughter? You should have known better than to have an affair, given how strict they are about such matters.
I chuckled.
But you must be fine, right? You are so stingy with living expenses, you must have plenty of savings. I bet you and Mike are living it up. Mike moved into a dorm for his college this spring because commuting was tough. Damn, with the prepaid dorm fees and the mortgage, it's a lot. My savings got drained by that woman. She was two-timing me with a younger guy. Sounds tough. But that's none of my business. Oh, and about my alimony, plus half the value of the apartment for property division, please transfer it to my account once the claim arrives.
Tom was ranting over the phone, but I hung up without bothering. A few days later, while returning from shopping downtown, I bumped into Mike. Dressed in flashy fashion, with multiple piercings and blonde hair, he was noticeable from afar. Spotting me, he raised his hand in greeting.
"Hey, I heard you're on welfare now."
I was surprised.
"What? You're mistaking me for someone else."
"Don't pretend," Mike said with a twisted smile.
"Any jobless old lady like you would end up there. If you had just obeyed Dad and me, you could still be living comfortably."
"It's pathetic," I retorted.
"Receiving welfare is a citizen's right. We could all need it someday due to illness or accidents. It's wrong to look down on it."
Yeah. So, you're getting it too, huh?" Ignoring his smirk, Mike pointed his finger at me.
"Listen, you and I are done. Don't come begging to me, I won't lend you a penny. Remember that."
Just as I was about to retort, he turned his back and disappeared into the crowd. I bowed my head and trembled my shoulders, feeling the stares of passers-by. I couldn't help it, the situation was too absurd, and I couldn't suppress my laughter. Poor thing, he knows nothing. I'm curious to see his reaction when he finds out the truth. A few days later, waking up, I found a ridiculous number of missed calls from Mike. Reluctantly calling back, he yelled furiously.
"You tricked me."
"What are you talking about?"
"I heard from my cousin. You got 3 luxury condos from Grandpa's inheritance and are living comfortably. Hiding that during the divorce is low."
"My personal assets.
Why should I tell you or Tom? It's marital property. You should have divided it with Dad."
"Too bad, it became mine after the divorce proceedings.
So I can't give it to Tom."
I had known it was mine by my father's will, but I delayed the proceedings to avoid sharing with Tom. Mike then raged.
"You're rich and still getting welfare? I'm reporting you to the authorities right now."
"Feel free."
"The one getting it is Tom, though."
Mike fell silent.
"What?"
"I told you, it's not me. Are you listening?" I explained it like talking to a child.
"To be honest, even without the inheritance, I can live well. I have income from my cooking website and book sales, which I started secretly. But Tom spent all his money on his affair and has many debts. After being fired, he has no income."
"Mike, are you there?"
"Dad's on welfare." "No way."
I pulled the phone away from my ear as Mike screamed. Waiting for him to calm down, I continued the conversation.
"You really haven't heard, have you? Tom's too proud to tell his son. A relative who Tom asked for money told me that he was evicted for not paying his apartment rent and now he's unemployed, holed up in a rundown apartment. If you're worried, why don't you reach out to him?"
For a while, there was silence on the other end of the phone. After a few minutes, Mike spoke resentfully.
"You're cold. After all Dad did for you, don't you feel any gratitude? You have money, you should give it to him." "Why should I? Ever since we got married, it's been nothing but unpleasant. I don't feel indebted to him."
I responded coolly.
"If you're so concerned, why don't you lend him money? You have a job." "I don't have any savings. The money from my job, well, it goes to hanging out with friends."
Mike's tone faltered, and I smirked.
"You've been partying quite lavishly. As a student, you shouldn't be borrowing money to go to clubs." "How did you know that?" "I saw you across the street the other day, right after we parted. You met up with a club hostess and went into a luxury store. Plus, I found a club membership card at home. And using my credit card without permission is out of the question."
Mike stumbled over his words, trembling.
"It's unfair. You got all those fancy condos from Grandpa and Dad and I got nothing. This is discrimination."
Okay.
The bill for the credit card is coming soon, so make sure you pay it."
The call ended before I finished speaking. I sighed and ended the call as well. I thought it was over, but a few months later, Tom and Mike showed up unannounced at my parents' house. When the doorbell rang persistently, I answered the intercom to find them there. Expecting they had come to borrow money, I let them into the house to avoid causing a scene outside. Tom and Mike's appearance had drastically changed from their once stylish looks to worn shirts and dirty pants. Their eyes lacked vitality, and they looked haggard. Yet they still had the energy to be sarcastic. Upon entering the living room, Tom looked around and sneered.
Same old shabby house. Why don't you sell those condos and rebuild this place? Do something nice for your mother living on a meager pension. This is the house of Dad's memories, so it's fine as is. More importantly, when are you two going to pay back the money? You're past the deadline.
Tom lifted his chin and arrogantly proposed.
Susan, I'll forgive you now. So let's remarry. What? You started a cooking site, right? If you can handle the housework perfectly, I'll even let you work. So come back. Being kind enough to forgive a wife who abandoned her husband and child, Dad's generous. So, Mom, why don't you live with Dad again? It must be insecure for two women living alone.
I was speechless. Then rage surged within me.
Don't you dare mock me. How much more do you need to ridicule me before you're satisfied?
I yelled, my anger erupting at Tom and Mike, who widened their eyes in shock.
After treating me like a housemaid, hurling abuse at me, and not giving me enough for living expenses, you now want me back because I inherited the condos? That's absurd. What, you plan to abandon us? Rich people really are stingy. Knowing we're struggling for money, yet still demanding payment. You're heartless. You were poor just a while ago, don't get too full of yourself.
As we were arguing, my mother returned from shopping. Immediately, Tom and Mike started fawning over her.
Please lend us some money. We'll probably pay it back. And isn't it unfair that only Susan got her dad's inheritance? Give me one of those condos too. Grandma, long time no see, how have you been? Please persuade Mom to remarry Dad. He doesn't want a divorce, but Mom's being stubborn.
Surprised by Tom and Mike's sudden flattery, my mother's expression changed after hearing their words. She put down her shopping bag on the refrigerator's floor and took a deep breath.
So shameless, both of you. What? What do you mean?
Learn some shame, she exclaimed loudly. Tom and Mike were taken aback, understandably confused. As my mother usually spoke softly. She glared sharply at them and sternly said,
I've heard everything about the divorce from Susan. How dare you show up here like this? Oh, come on. Susan's exaggerating. You should hear our side. Yeah, Grandma. Mom tends to lie quite a bit. I remember very well how you both behaved at my husband's funeral.
My mother interrupted, continuing in a stern tone.
You arrived late, didn't greet me or the relatives, and just yawned throughout the service. You left before the coffin was sent off. After behaving like that, you have the nerve to ask for his inheritance?
She drove Tom and Mike to the entrance, glaring fiercely at them.
We're strangers now. Don't you ever come here again. If you do, I'll call the police.
She pushed them out, still in their socks, threw their shoes at their feet, and locked the door immediately. Tom, who had been reluctant to pay me, eventually transferred the money to my account, advised by his lawyer that a lawsuit would cost even more. However, since he hadn't found a job since being fired, his parents had to cover for him after hearing about his situation from relatives. They visited my parents' home, apologizing for the trouble Tom caused. After giving up on finding a new job, Tom returned to his hometown under the pretext of helping out with his family's farm. However, the reason for his divorce became common knowledge throughout the village, and people from little kids to the elderly would point and laugh at him while he helped in his parents' fields.
Ah, there's stingy Uncle Tom.
Even with a degree from a prestigious university and a job at a big corporation, he's no good if his wife leaves him because he's so rotten. The reason for his previous divorce was also his reckless spending. He'll never change.
Being ridiculed by the folks in town is infuriating. Remarry to show them up.
I got so fed up with these persistent messages that I blocked Tom's contact. His affair partner had already dumped him, as it seems the end of money meant the end of their relationship. I tracked down this affair partner using a private investigator and made sure they paid alimony properly. As for Mike, I made him reimburse the money he had recklessly spent using my credit card. Although he was enrolled in a prestigious university and was on track to follow in his father's footsteps as an elite, his constant skipping of classes to hang out led to him dropping too many credits and being expelled. His friends and girlfriends were concerned, but Mike's arrogant comments out of sheer bravado led to everyone turning their backs on him. Then, there was a huge fight with Tom, who said, "You're my son and you won't even help pay off my debts." Now, they're apparently estranged. Mike lives alone in a small apartment, making ends meet with part-time jobs. Unable to freely buy things and having to cut down on living expenses despite having an income, he's subjected to daily sarcasm. But that's all in the past now, and I feel refreshed. As my cooking website is doing well and I'm about to publish a book, I've moved to the top floor of a high-rise condo, which is part of my father's inheritance. My mom is still healthy, but she's already 73. The high-rise is close to my childhood home, so it's perfect for quickly getting to my mom if anything happens. I'm planning a surprise spa trip for her upcoming birthday. Though my marriage was a failure, I want to continue to have a good relationship with my mom.